the great thing about real estate and being a real estate professional is that you get to leverage taxes called accelerated tax depreciation, or you can call it cost segregation, which is essentially using your property as a depreciating asset and writing it off as a tax write-off of your income. So here's an example. If you have $1 million and as a just a regular or as a real estate professional, you can accelerate that depreciation cost because of that home cost of a million. You can depreciate it in 5 years or 15 years, but say you did it in 5 years, right? Like I'm gonna depreciate this home in 5 years. That $1 million, you can write off 200K off of your taxes.
Welcome back to Getting to Yes with N.O.P.E podcast. I'm your host, David Floor. We have another topic for you today, and this is more around real estate investing as a passive income. We have a special guest coming on, Edrian Biala. We actually grew up together and both had similar track paths throughout our career, from agency recruiting into the tech landscape, both breaking into the sales profession. He will tell his story in just a second, but ultimately for you, the listener, the takeaway here is to understand how Edrian, within less than 2 years, broke into the real estate investing landscape, especially in a downturn market, as a passive income while still maintaining his 9 to 5 in the tech scene. And what are the steps for some of you that want to get into this space around how to educate yourself? What are the pieces that you'll need when building your real estate portfolio? So if this is something that's interesting to you, this is your opportunity to learn a little bit more around his success through the N.O.P.E platform, through building his network, creating opportunities, being prepared for those moments, and excelling. So if you are new to the channel, welcome. If you have listened to our other podcast, thank you. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And if you have any questions for me, please do not hesitate to reach out directly. If you have any specific questions for the guests that are coming on, also, I will drop their contact information below. So without further ado, would love to introduce Edrian, but then also before we actually go into your success in real estate, would love to learn a little bit more about your background, where you're currently located, your 9 to 5, and then also how you leveraged N.O.P.E to get to yes. So over to you.
Cool. First and foremost, thank you for having me, David. It's a pleasure being on here and sharing my experiences and what I've learned. A little bit about myself. So I got into tech about 7 years ago, jumped into it with Oracle, and then now kind of transitioned to multiple positions throughout my tenure in just tech in general. So currently right now I'm at a company called Synopsys, a cybersecurity company, as one of the portfolios, doing post sales as a customer success manager. And been here for 2 years, seeing some successes and doing pretty well. So that's my current role right now.
Yeah, great. So I appreciate the little backstory, but why don't you start, like, where are you currently located? And then, your upbringing that helped you break into tech. So for the audience that's listening in, we had a very similar path. We both essentially went to high school together. So that kind of gives away where you're currently located. So I guess I'll just tell the audience, you're based out of the Bay Area in California, in the South Bay, to be precise, for anybody that understands like the geographic. But we both essentially went to college together. But why don't you share a little bit about that and like how you broke through to tech, because we both leveraged N.O.P.E as that model to essentially get in. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, well, leveraging N.O.P.E started as a childhood, before going into high school, meeting you. Like when I was a child, I did not know that I understood supply and demand as what it was, supply and demand, until I actually did it. And just like a quick backstory, once I found out banh mi sandwiches were really popular in high school or middle school, I asked my buddy, like, hey, can your mom make me banh mi sandwiches? And I gave her like $15 and 20 or 15 or $20. She got all the ingredients. She made me about 7 sandwiches. I went back to school and I sold every sandwich for $5 and flipped it. And I kept doing it over and over again. It was just a hot commodity for like 1 month.
I did
So
not know that.
yeah, I just heard the demand. I just had lunch one day and my buddy was like, hey, do you want my banh mi sandwich? My mom made it. I don't want it. I was like, all right, cool. I'll just trade you for my calzone. And then I started eating it and I was like, damn, this is really good. And a buddy of mine was like, can I try it? And then he was like, damn, this is really good. And I was like, oh, okay, well, all these people like it. Let me see if I can make a bunch of them. So that's just the backstory. That that was Nope right there in itself. But yeah, fast forward to where I'm at today, or fast forward to how I leveraged Nope and how I broke into tech. I went to college with you. I started studying advertising and went to art school, learning graphic design, starting to like understand the whole atmosphere of marketing, economics, how to position yourself, but also doing the digital work and campaigns. Uh, so I started learning that, and I started doing what do they call it back then? It was called like individual work. Like you're a 1099, you're doing ad hoc work for
Oh,
like,
you're a contractor.
yeah, basically for like Twitter banners,
Mhm.
Instagram photos, whatever it may be. But so I started doing that as a side gig while working into retail. Um, and then once I started figuring out I didn't really like it, I wasn't passionate about it anymore, and I was more involved in talking to people and understanding their needs and wants. I then reached out to you and I was like, hey, how's recruiting going? And again, I just reached out to you and you're like, oh, that's cool. I'm doing this and that. And then I did my own due diligence and just got lucky and got hired at a startup company out here in the Bay Area in Campbell, and they took a leap of faith on me, and then I just did well. Um, and then that point on, the tech industry just started booming. Like after reaching out to all these VPs and software engineers and just hearing their story and why they're going to this company or what kind of companies they're trying to get into, it started feeding into my head like, if technology is going into this direction and this is how much money they're making,
Yeah.
maybe I should make that transition too. So I reached out to a old buddy of mine that I used to work with at AT&T. His roommate worked at Oracle. So I reached out to him. I was like, do you have a position open, or how do I get into tech? I have no experience into, whatever you're doing, but I'm really interested in learning. So he goes, there's a job fair. I just recommended you through my manager, and you can just see how you do with a panel of other managers. So I studied my database thing through the internet and just started understanding what Oracle has to offer, and made a really good connection with one manager, and he took a chance on me and I got hired. And
So I think I want to add to that too, because my story is very similar to yours, where although I didn't major in advertising, I, went to San Jose State and graduated from there, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I remember wanting to get into recruiting, and I felt that the avenue to get into in-house recruiting was through agency. And for anyone that is listening that is an agency recruiter, it is a grind. It's very similar to sales. And although you did recruiting for like dev and IT professionals and candidates, I focused on direct hire sales, and from entry level all the way up to VP of sales and above.
yeah,
And I remember creating this network of my Rolodex of VPs of sales. And one of them like stood out to me where he said, David, don't think that you're not in sales right now. Like recruiting is sales. And that kind of like set the light bulb off in my head of, man, maybe there is another avenue outside of recruiting. But as anyone in the agency space knows, like the world is your oyster. Like they try to position full commission on you, and you can make a ton of money. I don't know how many people we've seen like make $200,000-$300,000 a year just crushing it in agency recruiting. but if you don't close anything, you don't get paid.
Yeah.
And that was very difficult for me to kind of like wrap my head around, and just knowing that, understanding like the technology stack and then understanding that landscape, it just like elevated our business acumen. And that was something that I attribute like my time at Salesforce to, but then also your time at Oracle, because of just like the R&D that they put in like sales professionals to understand like what it takes to like close business and generate revenue. But that also comes with the model behind N.O.P.E, right? Is like creating that network, creating that opportunity. You're going to fall on your face a couple times, but the more you're prepared, the more you'll excel. So,
Mhm.
uh, how long were you at Oracle? And like what you're at Synopsys now, but this isn't the topic of the story, right? People aren't here to hear about our SaaS industry experience. They want to hear more about you. So, how long were you at Oracle before you transitioned to Synopsys?
I was at Oracle for 2.5 years. And every year was a different role, which I am so grateful for, because it, like you said, um, it got me the opportunity to meet new people, build my business acumen, understand how the business operates, and yeah, and every level of that form.
Yeah. So, I want to transition because, like, just going back to, we could talk about our SaaS careers as much as we want, but um, we're coming up to 2023, and by the time this is out, like, or people are listening to it, we'll already be in 2023. And during that time, I think it was the end of 2019, we kind of like ran into each other and we're catching up. And at that time, I was on paternity leave with my first kid, and I remember mentioning to you that I was like trying to figure out how to just like make the time go by during paternity leave and what passive income to do. And I was trying to get into day trading, and I was trying to convince you to do it with me. And I lost a lot of money doing it. But I learned a lot around like the market and just kind of how to read what's happening in the landscape and how the market shifts and corrects itself. And you had more success than I did. But then I circled back with you months later when we're in the COVID state, and everybody was trying to get into day trading because everyone was working from home and everyone was trying to get on Robinhood and trade from their phone. And everyone was trying to get into the whole crypto and Bitcoin scene.
Mhm.
So, what happened to you in that point, and what happened where you shifted into real estate? What was that breakthrough moment, and why did you have that glass ceiling moment where you said, I need to get into investing
So
outside of your day to day?
yeah, so that's a really good question, loaded, because there's a lot of components and
Yeah,
elements,
for sure.
right? So when you introduced me to that, which was a blessing because it helped me understand the market so much better. But as I started building, well, actually taking a lot of losses and actually getting better at it from my losses that I took, I we hit COVID, and I started realizing that the money that I'm gaining is gonna get taxed. Because as income earners, we're always worried about what tax bracket we're in, how much we're gonna get hit by taxes, right? So every time I start accumulating money in my E-Trade account, I was like, well, do I have to save this? Like, what am I going to do with this money? Because if I look at it as if I can spend it, then I'm going to be owing taxes to Uncle Sam at the end of the year by a lot of money. So I knew of this idea because I was already getting, not drilled, but it was already planted in my head prior to COVID about real estate and like looking into it. And I revisited that thought again during COVID
Sorry,
because
not to cut you off, but just to kind of like double down on your taxes, you're referring to the short-term gains over long-term gains. So I realize that with day trading is like you're doing short-term gains versus like less than a year and trying to flip it, versus
yeah.
long-term of holding 366 days and then turn it into a long-term gain and then like being less taxed. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that the audience that isn't familiar with like the day trading model or short term versus long term, there are like different percentages in the gains that you're getting. So go ahead, continue.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So yeah, so once I like started learning about the taxes and I got into like, well, I revisited the whole real estate thought, I I did some due diligence prior. I was like, what does real estate give you outside of passive income and equity? And that there it will show you like here are some advantages for your taxes. And I was like, ooh, this is good because this is not what I'm earning right now as far as my W-2 write-offs or even the day trading write-offs. So as I started learning I got so obsessed with it that I bought books by Robert Kiyosaki's CPA, and then like just started looking at YouTube videos and understanding in bits and pieces. And there's like an abundance of how you can use it and leverage it for your income. And so that that moment was like one of those things. Okay, look into this because you may find something, or you may be even more passionate about doing this than your day trading and your job. So as I'm learning this whole thing about real estate investing and taxes during that period of time during COVID, it was a lot of fear and uncertainty because my company and other companies were feeling it too. They were going through layoffs, trying to save money, and you didn't know if your number was going to be called. So you're just sitting there doing your work, and if your number was called, then so be it. You're back on the market and getting the checks. And that's what drove me to doing this even further and going to real estate investing, because that fear isn't what I liked. It was more like the fear drove me to doing it, basically. I didn't like that feeling, but I accepted it, but it encouraged me to do something else. So that was that ceiling moment where everything kind of collapsed into my mind where, okay, there's something there for you. You want to take the risk of investing into yourself, or are you going to play your cards where your company may just lay you off and you're just going to sit there and cry about it? And so I just said, okay, I'm going to invest in myself and learn more about this.
And that's actually still going on today. So anybody that's in the tech landscape is feeling it, seeing it. We're watching it in real time again. From 2020 to now 2022, companies are going through massive layoffs, and they're trying to correct themselves of overhiring, inflated numbers, and we're witnessing our first friends and people in the network just getting laid off. But you're not just doing that research yourself. Yes, you can go on Google and look this up, but who else were you talking to? What, as far as the networking aspect, who showed you this route and who introduced you to real estate? We have so many different friends that are real estate agents that can tell you this or tell you that, but most times people who are listening in, even myself, like when I think of real estate, I think of, okay, I'm gonna buy a house, I'm gonna live in this house. Or I'm gonna buy this house and I'm gonna sit on it, and like I don't have $3 to $5 million to bid against somebody else. You're doing it in a different way. So what is that way, and who showed you that way?
So when I got into my first real estate investing, I actually did it by myself. I didn't know who to reach out to, but it was more because I just took a chance on myself. I was like, I'm gonna buy my first property and see where this goes. And it was just more of a built-in mental thing where I was confident enough to do it. But after my first rental property, I didn't know how to excel from there. I was so lost. I was just praying that everything was going to go well on my first property. So I I started looking through my LinkedIn, and I remembered one of my friends that worked at Oracle. He posted something on LinkedIn and said, I just bought a 24 unit apartment at so and so, so and so. And I was like, hold on, wait, you're telling me this guy invests it too? And so I just decided to reach out with him. Funny enough, I worked with him at Oracle for like maybe 9 months, but that introduction and me going there was a reason for this, because I was meant to meet him at the end of the day. And so I linked up with him and I was like, hey, how's your real estate investing going? And he introduced me to his community and his team members that he built on his own. So he he brought me in as part of his community, investing community that he's a part of, and he also became my mentor after my first real estate property. And then from that moment on, I started understanding the power of my network. Like that just meeting him alone and then him introducing me to all these other investors, and then me going and flying out to other conferences was only because I was branching off to different people throughout COVID and up to this point. So in just a span of a year and a half, my Rolodex of people and I guess portfolio just grew exponentially at a speed that I didn't anticipate, nor did I know I was going to get to. But it was only because I was confident of the people that I networked with, and they helped me excel to where I was at today.
Yeah, and I think it just goes back to the model too, right? Even when we're recruiters, people think that because we have our network, they're going to give us handouts. And they think that, oh, Adrian, because you're a real estate investor, or you're going to be able to help me set up my first house or set up my first complex that I'm going to buy. But there's something that I want to take away from what you just mentioned is, yes, you have the network, but then you asserted yourself, you continue to apply yourself, and you're asking the curiosity questions that drove you to educate yourself to create those opportunities and be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So like what were some of those questions as someone listening is thinking, okay, yes, he had that network and he was blessed to meet that person from Oracle, but I don't have that situation. So what should I be doing? What should I be thinking about if I want to get into passive real estate investing or passive income as real estate investing?
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna go down into a mental thing, and then I can tell you why I'm saying it into a mental perspective. Because when going through the situation you're going through, especially this time now, we're going through an economic struggle, it's very important to be in a good mental space, because it opens up better questions, valuable answers, and it has more substance and meaning. And the other person that's receiving this information and hearing from you, they can understand genuinely that you're looking to get into this for real, for real. Like, this is not something you're just asking of. So to your point, the questions that I was asking was more like, how did you get to your point, like mentally strong to do your first investment? How did you analyze your deals? Where did you, like, what markets did you look into? Did you have a mentor? And what kind of lend? It was just a domino effect of a great conversation. Once it starts rolling through, the conversation can always begin with, why did you choose real estate investing as your passive income when there's other sources of passive income that you can do, such as day trading, or you can do drop shipping, what other side business that can help you gain money. And most of the time, their question or their answers has a bigger vision and purpose versus like, oh, I just want to make more money. And that point on, knowing that we're always on the grind and we just wanted to make more money constantly ever since we graduated college, that moment on, I was like, when they started telling me their answers in a bigger picture and their purpose, then you're like, okay, this guy is for real. Like, their vision is, I just want more time with my family. I just want to be healthy. And I just want to have really good relationships with the people I care about and the people that are successful and that are around me to help me get better. So
Yeah.
everybody, and it's funny because everybody that I met, of all the investors that I still connect to today, that I do partnerships with, they still have that same vision. And it's only because their purposes are all aligned to what we're trying to do. So if someone were to ask me, like, how'd you get into it? It's because I actually truly want to have financial freedom and have more time for myself. But
Yeah.
if it, like, if you really want to get into something like this, then you have to have some sort of, you'd have to have that emotional element of that, versus like, I'm just trying to make $1 million in 3 years. Like, okay, you can't do that, but the other person that's trying to help you get there may not want to see you be greedy, or may not want to work with you because you're like, greedy.
So, that's good at a high level, but if we drill in, right? Like for me, I was fortunate to purchase a property with my wife. I think it was like 5 years ago, and it's so foreign to me now. I forgot like what it's like to go through that. And this was like I purchased it in the Bay Area, and I was like, okay, that's it. Like I don't think I have any more money to tap in to buy again.
Yeah.
And I'm probably there's people listening in that are scared to like say, okay, like how do I invest in this downturn market? Like everyone's getting laid off. And what are the positives? Like, what are we talking about? You mentioned tax write-offs. Like, why would I do this over something else? Like, give me some hard numbers that someone can like digest in their head of, hey, in day trading, you're going to get taxed 60%, 40%, whatever, some number, whatever. But then in real estate, these are the write-offs that you can put when you're filing for your taxes. What does that look like? Let's start with that.
Okay, so in real estate, let's just go to touch the first part, the downturn market and how you invest in a downturn market with everybody purchasing homes. So the reason why things are still in motion when purchasing homes is because when you go into a market, you're essentially the tenants, or if it's Airbnb, they're still paying for your mortgage at the end of the day. So what you're trying to calculate is what the cost of the purchase of the home is going to be versus the interest rate. So like, say, for example, if you're buying a home that's $1 million at a 6% interest rate, and like, let's just say for, just random number, say like it's $7,000 a month. Okay. So if it's $7,000 a month and you have a tenant going into your home, or if you're making it into Airbnb, you can adjust the rates of your rent and or adjust the rates of your Airbnb to accommodate what you have to pay for on a monthly basis. And a good example is like, I just closed on a home in Florida with a 6.5 interest rate with a mortgage at $2,800. Mm-hmm. But I haven't paid for it because I'm having the renter pay $3,500 a month. So like, it's not scary. If you're looking at going and jumping into investing, you just got to make sure you calculate your numbers right. Analyzing data and calculating numbers is probably one of the most important things when going into real estate investing. Analyzing your market, and if it's an upward trend where rent's going up higher, that's very important too. So understanding if that city or county's growing in population, if their median income has grown the past 5 years, jobs are being created in the area, if tech companies are switching over to that area. There's a lot of components that make a compelling reason why to go into a market. So essentially what you want to, so in hindsight, like what you really want to do is just understand your market and understand the numbers.
Yeah. So you mentioned, because when I think of people in real estate purchasing, most of the people I talk to are in California or in the Bay Area. And I always assume that when someone says they're going to get into investing, they're going to buy in the area that they live in. And you just mentioned that you bought a house or a property in Florida. So what kind of research are you doing? And this may just be elementary for me, but every time I think of purchasing something in real estate, it's got to be a hot market. It's got to be the Bay Area. It's got to be Southern California. It's got to be Seattle, Dallas, anything that is a hot market, maybe New York. So where do you search for your properties? And are they like, do you have a specific strategy of you searching for your properties that somebody doesn't know about right now that they can walk away with and learn more?
Yeah. So I used to be that investor where I wanted to invest everywhere. It was the oddest thing. Like, I want to invest here, I want to invest there because they have more passive income in this city, or this city has more equity. But I started realizing that when you're learning about that market so in depth, it can be so overwhelming. Like what I do as my due diligence prior to making that move, like, all right, I'm making my investment there, is that I see how much population of people are there and how much it grew the last 5 and 10 years. I look at how much growth of jobs were as part of that as well, and then what the median income is. And the biggest one also is what the renter versus homeowner percentages are, because then that can kind of give you an idea that if these type of if there's a salary of this market and there's still this many people renting, it's obviously because the housing cost is too high. Like a really good example would be the Bay Area. Like, homes are so expensive. There's so much renters here, not homeowners. So those those few things are some things that I look at. Then I also look at, okay, let me just do a trial run. Like if I was going to look into this area. So I would go like the Zillow or Redfin, find a random home and be like, all right, let me see how much my mortgage would be with an interest rate. And then I would go into another website, it's called Rent-O-Meter, and I would see what the average cost of rent would be in that zip code. And then I just start doing my like analysis. I'm like, all right, cool. So if I got this home and this would be my interest rate and this is how much my cost would be, I don't know if that's the right move. But there's further analysis from there. Like you can also go in Zillow and see what's for rent at that zip code also. Like what are numbers are being thrown out? Because sometimes websites aren't really updated um, up to date for that day. So yeah, see what rents are up for on Zillow, and then see what's for sale, and then see what numbers you can pull out of how much your mortgage, property taxes, interest, and insurance will cost you. And that's how you kind of formulate a really basic, and I'm going to just tell everybody, it's a really basic way of analyzing what area you want to look into. But once you get to that point, there's so much components in my head, it's crazy. Once you get to that point, you start understanding, does this city provide more equity for my home or does it provide me more passive income for my home? And then depending on how you want to play your investment game, do you want more money every month or do you want equity grow faster? That's how you can also make your decision as well.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. As you're explaining that, at one point before the pandemic happened, I was considering, my wife and I were considering looking at purchasing in Austin. And we happened to visit there and we're like, oh, this place is great. You know, tech is booming out here. Companies are moving over to this region, and maybe we should get in and try to get into investing. And I remember getting just turned off from several friends that lived there. And they're like, oh, you know, downtown Austin is no different than the Bay Area. And I started looking at prices in downtown Austin, and the prices were the same as the Bay. And then, you know, friends started saying, oh, you have to look outside. You have to look at these different regions. And I started reaching out to my old real estate agent, and we just started thinking about, well, who's going to oversee this? Who's going to manage this? Do I have to fly out there every like once a quarter? And then I just got turned off. I was like, you know, this is doing too much. Like I don't really know this market. It was hard for me to just get our place the first time around in the Bay Area, and just it's going to be a headache for me thinking about that. If I'm thinking about this, I guarantee people who are listening in on this have the same feeling. So that's an obstacle that I faced and I didn't overcome. So is that something that you faced, and obviously you overcame it? So what would you give as far as an advice to somebody that was feeling the way that I was feeling?
Yeah.
Is feeling now.
That feeling is oh so familiar. Like I still have that same feeling once I go to my next investment. I still get nervous, and it's not like I'm second guessing myself, but the unknown of what will happen of the next step is still there. Like you can't guarantee your investment's going to make it. However, you can take a calculated risk and say, I will accept the best case scenario of this, or the worst, or the expected, or the worst case. If you accept all three, then you're just going to move forward with it. But what you explain is like the overwhelming aspect of being a landlord or being an investor. There, you even when you close, you still have to deal with property managers and toilet fixes or tenants and making sure they don't mess up your home. That in itself, the obstacle of doing that is all like mental. I'm not kidding. Like I just gotta say, like you have to accept the thought of it of, if I do this, I have to accept that I'm just gonna have to accept it for what it is. But the only way you can get past that of the emotional side or the mental side of everything and doing the physical work is another beast in itself. Like to do more research on having property managers and everything, that's actually probably the easier part than getting the rental property, because the property managers, you can just go and like, hey, I want you to watch over my property. They get a 10% cut. They have the contractors on deck. They can fix it. They'll be the first line of phone calls, and they just relay the information over to you. So that property manager part is pretty easy. You just got to find the right one.
Yeah. So it seems to me like you're only 2 years in to this game. Maybe give or take, we're coming up to 3 years. I'm going to ask the question that some people that are listening want to know. How many properties do you have today? And like, what are we looking at as far as locations? Because it all sounds great, right? Like, and I want to, hey, I want to follow Adrian's story. So what does that look like to, to you? Or like, what am I thinking about if he's in this game for less than 3 years? What would my
2 years,
success look? I'm sorry?
a year and a half, year and a half.
A year and a half, right? So you've seen success and you're still doing your side or your actual full-time job.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask the follow-up question on that, the latter half, but let's go back to the front question. Like how many properties do you have today?
So I'll just say this: I've done five acquisition deals in a year and a half. There One was done in California in the Bay Area. One was done in Dallas, Texas. One was done in Florida. Um, the other one I'm working on right now. Hopefully that goes well, but it's in Alabama. That's for a multifamily. And then the other one was in Hawaii.
Awesome. And going back to my second question, which is I actually don't even remember what my second question was going to be. I may have to like rewind it and look back.
Yeah.
Um, I think for audiences listening in, there's going to be a lot of real estate agents that have their approach and their methodology and their strategy. For them that are listening, they'll say like, "Oh, okay, this is nothing new to me," and or like I've told people this before, but there's others that don't want to follow the traditional real estate agent's route. Like, what should they be thinking about? What should they be doing and the steps they need to do, leveraging their network?
The Well, let's go unpack that. So you're saying like what they should do as far as leveraging their network to get into real estate?
Yeah, and I also think though too, like what would you say? The reality is there's going to be real estate agents that just don't like your strategy. They don't like what you're talking about. They're going to hate on you about it. And what would you say to them versus what you would say to somebody else that doesn't want to take that advice?
You know, it's funny. Everybody's formula or approach to real estate is totally different. And which is fine because that's how evolution works. Like, you know, you do different things and people collaborate and it kind of grows that way. But yeah, no one's going to have the same thought or agree with what I'm doing, which is cool and it's understandable. But at the end of the day, what I'm doing is something they don't know, and how I'm leveraging either my network or how I'm preparing myself to do this. Because obviously, going from a year and a half to today, there's something of what I'm doing in my equation that is kind of correct. You know, I'm not saying it's bulletproof, but if you can get this many properties in a year and a half, especially one in the Bay Area, you just let me know and I'd love to talk to you. So all the haters and critics, yeah, they're not going to follow. They're going to read a book and follow what they say because they have more acumen and credibility, which is fine. But one advice I would say is that talk to as many people as you can, network with all the real estate investors as you can, that you can get your hands on, because the more information you get for yourself, the more you can make your own formula and approach to your own real estate game. Because your game, for whoever's listening, your approach can be so much better than mine. And then once I see you doing really well, either on the street or a podcast or at a conference, then I would approach you like, hey, how did you approach this? Because I'm really interested. This whole thing isn't like I'm gonna do better. The whole thing is getting all the golden nuggets from people at a higher level and feeding it to you, and then me using it and making it my own.
Sure. So I'm going to ask the other follow-up question
Yeah.
as far as your passive income, right?
Yeah. Okay. Go
If
ahead.
if, if you want to share some of the numbers, somebody who's a year and a half into this and somebody who's in the tech scene that already is doing well at an enterprise company and has seen success at your company for the last 2 years and during your time at Oracle, what are we talking about as far as numbers?
Okay. Let's just say this. gross wise, I probably make as much as my W-2.
Okay.
Okay, let's just say this. Gross wise, a year, it's about 175K.
Okay. So that piques my interest. But
Yeah,
what are the tax implications on that, right? That's the gross.
that's
So
that's a great question.
yeah,
So this is why the reason why this whole real estate thing is so fascinating is because yeah, you can make so much money. Well, like not that's just like off your passive. We haven't touched upon the equity piece of it because that's a whole nother ball game.
yeah,
And but the great thing about real estate and being a real estate professional is that you get to leverage taxes called accelerated tax depreciation, or you can call it cost segregation, which is essentially using your property as a depreciating asset and writing it off as a tax write-off of your income. So here's an example. If you have $1 million and as a just a regular or as a real estate professional, you can accelerate that depreciation cost because of that home cost of a million. You can depreciate it in 5 years or 15 years, but say you did it in 5 years, right? Like I'm gonna depreciate this home in 5 years. That $1 million, you can write off 200K off of your taxes. You know what I mean? Like just
so
just that alone.
I'm wrapping my head around that.
Yeah.
So that's that those are interesting numbers, right? And I think that's what the audience wants to listen to, right? That's what they are people are listening about. How do I get into real estate as passive income? And just that snippet alone that you mentioned, the depreciation and the write-offs, that's what's in it for you, right? Like
Yeah.
you can be a day trader and clear $1 million in day trading in a year, but like how much do you owe back? Versus
Yeah.
you can get $1 million in real estate investing and you can write it off as depreciation. What does that number look like for somebody that has $1 million a year into real estate investing? What are they walking away with that?
Right. Exactly. So like if you if you make say you did a tax depreciation off of one of your assets, just one, and you did make 175K a year in gross of all your total portfolio of your passive income, all that is written off. Like all so your 175K now goes down to zero. And there's a thing called a carryover in taxes. So if you still got more tax write-offs, you can carry it over to the following year. So that year is going to be $0, and whatever you paid taxes on, like on your income, it'll be given back to you. So imagine doing this if you buy a home every year and you're like, all right, I'm just gonna do a depreciation off that home, just write off and then write off and then write off. It's just a domino effect. The bigger the property, the more write off you can get off of the first year, second year, up to 5 years if you want to do it in a short span of time. But again, consult with your CPA because I'm not a CPA. This is how I understand it, and that's how I've been doing it for the past 2 years. You can actually strategize this whole depreciation or write-offs thing that where it's advantageous for you. If you want to take a break, save it for next year or something.
Yeah, so that goes back into, one of the takeaways, right? What are the pieces that you need when building a real estate portfolio? You just said a CPA. So I can do all this research, right? I can start trying to do it myself, but you mentioned the portfolio. What are some additional steps that someone needs to do to get into this passive game?
You really got to build a good team that's going to protect you when you start building your real estate portfolio, like all your assets. So one big one is a CPA, because every time you make an acquisition or you purchase a home, you got to understand the tax implications or how it's going to benefit you tax wise. And if you purchase this, like, and this is my income and passive, how is it gonna affect you? So one big one's a CPA. Another one is having a solid legal team. When I say a solid legal team, they help you make sure your LLC is all in accordance to the state that you're in. Also, if you want to have a good legal team that does business trust, make sure they put all your assets into a business trust so that way it's well protected. Because again, everybody does an LLC, but there's a reason why it's called limited liability. It's limited. So just be cognizant of your portfolio is going to be what's going to make you financially free, but also give you generational wealth. So how are you going to protect it? So having a great legal team, having a great CPA, you can throw in a great financial advisor in there too. That way they can understand where income's coming in, credits and debits, and then where you can make your next move. And another one is having a solid mentor, because a mentor is going to always guide you into a direction, so that way you can minimize your losses, but also give you advice where you, again, like I said earlier, you can formulate into your own. So those four things are very important as you start building your portfolio.
So as you're mentioning this, I'm thinking about all the other states that you have properties in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need a CPA for each other property? For like, do you have to get a brand new CPA, a brand new legal team for each state that understands like the state policies and regulations? Or is it just kind of like general, like United States, like, hey, this kind of touches it all?
No, you can get one, but if you have a legal team that primarily focuses on real estate, they actually know their laws by state. So you
Okay.
don't have to do the studying for that. Same thing with a CPA. If I could recommend a CPA, like and you're just dealing with real estate investing, find a CPA that focuses on real estate investing, because again, they're going to know all the tax laws that you won't know. And then they're going to help you, figure out what to do, what's best for you. So no, you don't have to do all the studying on that part.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's just there's a lot of things that we can go down. And I when you and I connected on this topic, I was like, hey, I feel like this is so foreign to me. And and I still like am wrapping my head around what you're talking about. I felt when I purchased my home, it was out of sight, out of mind. Once we signed and Seal delivered it, and then when we refinanced, when we had the opportunity to refinance before interest rates just like skyrocketed through the roof,
Yeah.
I like talk to people about it, and when they're telling me about purchasing their homes, I'm like, honestly, I forgot. I'm like, I just get the checks withdrawn out. So,
Yeah.
um, like you've attended a lot of these conferences, and you're talking to, I'm assuming there's real estate investors, real estate agents that are 15, 20, 30, 40 years into the game.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you've noticed between the people that are seasoned vets versus somebody that's less than 2 years like yourself in? Like, is there any gotcha moment that you say, oh, wow, there's not much difference of strategy that they're doing, or like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing and I need to add that to my skill set?
It's a twofold, because it's funny when I go to conferences, I always appreciate talking to the older folks, like the 50s and 40s and 60s, because they have a bunch of nuggets that essentially covers the basic fundamentals that you can add into your arsenal when going into real estate investing. But there's also things that they are not relevant about of what today's era is all in for. So I would say, yes, it's very important to talk to the older generation, understand the foundation, because those pieces of doing little things, when I say little things, but like looking at deals, analyzing the market, and what to do with your homes, it's all good and dandy. But today's era of real estate investing has changed dramatically ever since maybe like the beginning of 2010, 2013. Airbnb started coming out, and they just made a whole difference of this. Though travel nursing and corporate housing was still a thing prior to Airbnb, the Airbnb just elevated the whole concept of it. So what we're living in today as real estate investing is not the idea of, all right, I'm just going to get a home and then like rent it out. Like, okay, cool, you can do that. But today's society, it's more like, well, how's yours going to stick out? Like, what we're dealing with, or what I'm dealing with society, is thinking about how I'm going to invite my guests, or how is my home going to be attractive to other people. it's either location, how you stage it, basically how you stage it and where your location. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be put on social media and like, oh, I checked out this place; it's really cool. There's reviews. So the game has changed a bit, and you got to consider people going on vacation and the area you're targeting. Because if it's a nice community in the suburbs, that's kind of a guaranteed long-term rental tenant. You can change it to an Airbnb, but if everybody there in that block is so like I want it quiet for my kids to play on the court, they don't want an Airbnb there. So you have to be super cognizant of what areas you're diving into.
Sure. So we're getting close to the end here, and I'm thinking about. I have two questions that I want to ask. So one of them is there's people who have homes that are just like sitting on their house and they're thinking about getting into real estate. And I know that like people have thought about, and I've even thought about pulling an equity line of credit to try to invest into the next house. And I think you mentioned this to me at one point of potentially doing that. Is that something that someone can do to start investing into other properties, of like pulling equity line of credit and then purchasing one property and then using that equity line of credit to purchase the second, third, fourth, and just like kind of the trickle down effect? Is that a strategy, or am I off base there?
No, it is a strategy. That's a strategy that has been used prior in the past, but it's a strategy that you have to put more thought into, because when you do a HELOC, you're adding more payments into your monthly bill. Like you take out $100,000, you still got to make sure you pay that $100,000 back. But HELOCs are a thing, and that's how you can kind of jumpstart to your first rental property if you wanted to do so. But the strategy behind that, there's other ways of doing it. Like if you're in a high interest rate, you can just do a cash out refinance and just pull it out, dump it into another real estate investment. But again, what I'm saying is so easy to explain and to say versus actually going through it and understanding your numbers. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to take out money, how does this going to impact you on a monthly basis if things go wrong? How is it going to impact you if things go well? Like it's really like black and white at this point. Like if you make that move, make sure your numbers are there, like, and just make sure if you are calculating it correctly, just take that risk then. But the to answer that question, it's hard to say yes or no, because that is a strategy. Yes, I could say that is a strategy, but it's a strategy. You can't just say that's my number one strategy, really.
Yeah. So it's, I guess, kind of looking at the tech sector of the downturn, right, and company layoffs and people being affected by that. What, now that you're 2 years into this game, or a year and a half into the game, what do you see happening with the real estate market in this downturn, where people are kind of like not purchasing versus getting laid off in the tech sector, if that makes sense? Because you're kind of in both. You're seeing both sides right now.
Yeah. So if I like foreseeing the real estate market is kind of an opinionated thing, and I could say that it's going to go well or it's not going to go well, but what I foresee in the real estate market, it's just going to get better. Though it's not in a position. What I'm saying is I'm not in a position to say as a first-time home buyer or buying a home for yourself, but it's a good position for person that's interested in doing it as an investment. And the reason why I say that is because there's so much more room to negotiate prices of asking and going down because of interest rates being so high. So as before the pandemic, you see an asking price and it goes 20-30% higher, and then or even higher than that, because there's so much demand for it. But because the water's dry now and there's not a flood of people purchasing them, it makes it a lot better for me to purchase homes and not be anxious to be like, I have to close this in 7 days before someone else jumps on it. Like there's homes in this market that's been there for 120 days, 90 days, because interest rates have been going up. So Yeah, to answer your question, I'm actually looking forward to this economic downturn because it gives me more possibilities to purchase more homes. Now, the economic struggle with losing your job is is the most unfortunate part, but then that feeling of what we're going through now was the same feeling that we were going through in 2020. So just kind of manifesting this thought of I want to do real estate investment because I see bigger things. You just gotta take action and do it.
Yeah, that's, I think that was leaving it off with the like, what are the takeaways?
Yeah.
And uh, I know that from a reaching out perspective,
Yeah.
you're kind of incognito. So not a lot of people can get a hold of you like through social media, except for possibly LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
how can someone get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more? And what advice would you give to that person to leverage N.O.P.E?
Yeah. So I think because we're doing this podcast, I might just turn on my Instagram because after doing this for a while, I'm a big proponent of helping other people get into this game. So I think I'm gonna get on there and um, respond back to people if they are interested in doing real estate investing. But for the people out there leveraging N.O.P.E, it all begins with networking with other people and understanding the purpose and cause of what you're trying to do. If you can just get to that first thing of networking, then you'll eventually see opportunities unfold in front of you that you never thought would happen because those conversations again will have more substance. Like if you're really passionate about something and you start unfolding good questions, those opportunities will be in front of your face all the time, and you'll be surprised that how many opportunities are there when talking to other people. And then when doing this, you're already halfway through of meeting people and finding opportunities. At that point, why go back 50% when you're already 50% ahead? You might as well just prepare and go for it. Like the easy thing is to quit, but you already made those steps going forward, so might as well just keep taking the steps going forward.
Edrian Biala, for everyone that doesn't know who he officially is, Mr. Incognito. But
Yeah.
then also too, you mentioned the 50% in, 50% out, and just go forward if you're already 50 in. How I'll close it out with this because everyone's dealing with it. Everyone I talk to, the mental health aspect of things. How are you dealing with like overcoming like all whatever struggles in your personal life to continue to strive forward, especially in the real estate market?
Yeah, that's it's the way you see things. So like everything you deal with a struggle, the polar opposite, everything is like strength. So if you see weakness, then you'll end up going through strength. You just gotta enjoy and appreciate that journey going to the other trend. But one thing I can probably leave off with is if you're in a good mental mindset and just being grateful for whatever it is, you can be grateful. I'm always grateful for breathing, walking, talking, making sense of this and having reasoning with you and going over what I've been doing. um, One thing is to always change perspectives of the negativity and change it into positivity. So when I look at every struggle that I've gone through, either professional or personal, even the real estate, when I take all my losses or anything that blows me backwards into like funds, I always ask myself, well, how did this negative situation benefit me? Like how did it make me better? And what did I learn from this? And then when you start changing the perspective of negativity into a positive motion, you'll start getting these microdoses of joy because you're like, cool, I'm building this resilience of adversity through the other side of like hope and happiness and strength.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're going through it and you're like, I don't know what to do, just change the perspective of negativity because it's going to hold you back and spiral down into other things that's going to not be beneficial for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you coming on. And
Yeah.
for everyone else that's listening in, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions for Adrian. He's happy to help and happy to network with you. And for everyone else listening in, if you like the topics that we have today, again, please like, comment, And then also subscribe and, turn on those notifications. I want to hear from you all. If you have something that's interesting, how you leverage the N.O.P.E model to break through and you want to share your story, please do not hesitate to reach out. But until next time, thank you again, Edrian, and looking forward to us meeting again in person and hanging out and celebrating your success.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.
See you.